Hi, this is Steve Deckert of Decware. Today, I'd like to talk about imaging a little bit. Despite the handicaps imposed by rooms, speaker placement, wire, and so on, what drives the designs at Decware is, among other things, is 3D imaging. 3D imaging goes well beyond left, right, precise placement of instruments with good height and width. 3D imaging adds depth. If you were to compare the two, one is like looking at a flat picture of sound on the wall. The other is like looking at a live performance with the wall completely gone. Yes, I'd love it if everyone had a treated and dedicated listening room, because they would then be able to hear where so much of the effort goes related to our designs. Even though the majority will not have the opportunity, we build everything we make as though you will. This way, as you go through your audio session, you keep hearing the improvements. The Deckware would likely never be the weak link, so as you take things to ever higher levels, there are bigger rewards, and you don't have to continually buy better gear to play the game. With some irony, I have come a long way from where I started regarding my priorities about imaging. The first time I heard a 3D soundstage and a dedicated listening room, something I didn't even know was possible, I was hooked. Not knowing what really was responsible for it, I started building speakers that could disappear and image like I heard in that dedicated room. Later in my journey, when I started building amplifiers, I found out it wasn't the speakers that were responsible for the disappearing act. It was actually the amplifiers. In any case, I placed a higher priority on this effect than I did on things like frequency balance or dynamic. Fast forward 30 years or so, and I now place how the amp sounds over how well it images, simply because it doesn't matter if it images when it sounds like crap. And most people will not have the room or speaker placement to realize the imaging potential of the amplifier, but will certainly appreciate the sound character of it. So if asked, my answer has changed, but my personal preference and how I design amplifiers hasn't changed since day one. Of course, I don't choose one over the other when I design our amplifiers. You get both. Trust me, when you hear both happen at the same time, you won't soon forget it. When I started Deckware, I lived alone, and my whole house was a listening room. So it was possible to consume 3 rooms for the stereo rather than one. The 3 rooms were, in my case, all in a line, interconnected with large openings. The speakers flank the first opening, so as you listen, you can observe how far back into the second or third room the sound goes. I enjoyed rolling around a baby grand piano in there and placing it where the piano appears in the sound stage. It was always fun to make the piano sound like someone was playing it. This was the yardstick I used to develop the Deckware amplifiers, and why I abandoned negative feedback in our designs. We could have a recording that is rendering a soundstage that easily extends 30 feet behind the speakers, and by adding even as little as 6 dB of negative feedback to the amplifier, the rear of the soundstage would rush forward some 25 feet, leaving you with a soundstage that barely goes back 5 feet behind the speakers. Many people would be tickled if their soundstage went 5 feet behind their speakers, because it generally can't even do that when speakers are placed against the wall with a TV placed between them. So yes, it is definitely possible, but it takes a pretty serious room. Even our current listening room at Deckware can't do what my original room did. It's a nice balance of compromise that gives a stage depth of about 15 feet or so. The outdoor room gives similar results to my first listening room, but twice as wide and even deeper, closer to 60 feet, I would say. It's the only way to hear how a recording actually maps out the sound stage without being compromised by your room. Imaging isn't just the amplifier or the room, it's the absence of weak links in the audio chain. You must have good cables and several other things. Watch my video on the weakest link for more information about that. Have a great day and happy listening.